On May 23, 1979, the serene calm of Nagaokakyo's peaceful forests was abruptly shattered. Known for its quiet beauty and popular among locals for warabi picking, this rural landscape suddenly became the setting for a crime that would forever disturb the town's tranquility. That day marked the beginning of one of Japan's most chilling mysteries, as a gruesome discovery in these remote hills would leave a dark and lasting imprint on the nation. Around 11 a.m. on that fateful day, close friends and supermarket employees Koo Mizuno and Akashi were last seen leaving their bicycles at Jakushoin Temple, at the base of Mount Noyama. Witnesses, including a security guard and several locals, recalled seeing the two women entering the forest, ready for a peaceful day of foraging. Akashi, familiar with the area, had invited Mizuno to join her, planning to spend the afternoon gathering warabi. Their intention was simple: enjoy the tranquil surroundings, collect their share of edible ferns, and be back by 3:30 p.m., in time for Akashi to pick up her child from daycare. When the women failed to return by the expected time, their families grew increasingly worried. Mizuno's husband initiated a search of the woods that evening, but found no sign of the two women. The next morning, Akashi's husband joined the search efforts. Despite scouring the surrounding areas, no trace of the women was found. Desperate for help, Akashi's husband reported their disappearance to the Mukomachi police station at 2:50 p.m. on May 24th. Police launched a formal search that day and discovered the women's bicycles at the base of the mountain. However, it wasn't until May 25th, after search efforts expanded to include firefighters and police dogs, that the bodies of Mizuno and Akashi were found deep within the forest at approximately 10:30 a.m. The scene that greeted searchers was nothing short of horrifying. Both women had been brutally murdered in a manner that left a lasting impact on the nation. Upon finding the victims' bodies, investigators were able to piece together the events leading up to their deaths. Both women's personal belongings, including wallets, empty lunchboxes, and a small bundle of warabi, were scattered around them. The state of these belongings led investigators to conclude that the women had likely been attacked shortly after finishing their warabi gathering and having lunch, as the lunchboxes were empty. Forensic analysis of the victims' stomach contents revealed that they had been killed within an hour of eating, placing their time of death between 1:30 p.m. and 2 p.m. Akashis body was found on a nearly 45-degree slope in a thicket near the summit of Mount Noyama, lying on their back with their head facing downhill. A magazine at the time speculated that she may have been pushed from a small open area at the end of an animal trail located further up the slope. She was dressed in a sports shirt and jeans. Some buttons of the shirt had been torn and the shoes were off, but the jeans were properly worn. On her body, there were marks from manual strangulation, as well as signs of being repeatedly beaten, possibly punched or kicked, leaving more than 30 bruises. 9 ribs were broken, and the liver was ruptured. The direct cause of death was asphyxiation from being strangled with both hands. Near the body, her backpack containing 2,000 yen was left behind. Semen, presumed to be from the perpetrator, was found inside her body. The blood type was determined to be type O. Koo Mizuno's body was discovered a few meters uphill from Akashi's, in a small clearing near the same animal trail. She was lying face down, still wearing her backpack. The lower half of her body was naked, with her tights and underwear tangled around her legs. According to some reports, her underwear had been torn and her jeans and shoes were scattered near her body, suggesting signs of violence. When her body was lifted, a kitchen knife was found embedded in the left side of her chest. It had been driven directly into her bare skin. It seemed that the attacker had deliberately lifted her shirt to expose her skin, precisely stabbing her in the heart to ensure a direct and fatal wound. Additionally, there were marks on her neck consistent with manual strangulation, and she bore over 50 bruises, likely resulting from punches and kicks. The direct cause of death was determined to be blood loss from the knife wound. While no semen was detected in her body, a strand of hair thought to be from the perpetrator was discovered attached to her. Forensic analysis later revealed that the hair came from someone with blood type O. It is believed that the attacker may have worn gloves during the crime, as no fingerprints were found on the knife. Additionally, the knife bore no manufacturer's mark. The police determined that it was one of 70,000 knives produced in Seki City, Gifu Prefecture. However, this particular model had been discontinued a few years prior to the incident and was likely sold as an unmarked outlet product. One of the most perplexing and haunting pieces of evidence found at the scene was a handwritten note discovered in Akashi's pocket. The note, written on the back of a receipt from their workplace, contained a chilling message.
追われている。助けてください。この男の人、悪い人。
which translates to, "I'm being chased. Please help me. This man is bad." The receipt was dated May 21st, 2 days before the murders. The note was crumpled and shoved deep into Akashi's pocket, suggesting it had been written hastily and in desperation. Handwriting analysis confirmed that Akashi had written the note. What made the situation even more unsettling was the absence of a pencil or pen at the scene, raising questions about how it was created. Investigators could not determine whether the note was written just before the attack or if the women had been stalked and threatened days in advance, adding another layer of mystery to the case. One of the main suspects in the case was a suspicious man with a knife who had approached a woman a year before the murders. Described as being between 40 and 50 years old and approximately 170 centimeters, or about 5'7" tall, this man encountered the woman while she was foraging for warabi in the same area where Akashi and Mizuno would later be killed. He reportedly approached her and asked, in an unsettling manner, whether she had found any warabi. His odd behavior, coupled with the fact that he was carrying a knife, alarmed the woman, prompting her to flee the scene without further interaction. The incident was reported to the police, and a composite sketch was created based on her description. However, despite law enforcement's efforts, the man was never identified, leaving his potential connection to the murders in question. His identity remains a crucial piece of the puzzle, and his description aligns with other reports of strange men in the vicinity around the time of the murders. Another theory focused on 2 delinquent young men known to frequent the forests around the time of the murders. Often spotted riding bicycle in the Nagaokakyo area, these individuals were notorious for their violent behavior. One of them was reportedly trained in karate, leading investigators to speculate that the brutal injuries sustained by the victims, especially the blunt force trauma, could have been inflicted by someone with martial arts expertise. Witnesses reported seeing these 2 men descending from the hills shortly after the estimated time of the murders, and their suspicious behavior caught the attention of the police. Despite their violent reputation and the circumstantial evidence, authorities couldn't gather enough solid proof to arrest them. Without a direct link to the crime, and with the suspects vanishing shortly after the murders, they remain persons of interest, but nothing more. A particularly intriguing potential suspect emerged a decade later with the arrest of Tomio Hashimoto, a convicted serial killer responsible for a series of murders in Nishinomiya City in 1989. Among his victims was a schoolgirl, and the brutal nature of his crimes, characterized by stabbing and sexual assault, raised suspicions that Hashimoto might have been involved in the Nagaokakyo murders. Notably, Hashimoto had been active in the neighboring region during the time of the Warabi killings, and his methods closely resembled the violence inflicted on Akashi and Mizuno. However, despite these unsettling parallels, no conclusive evidence has ever linked him to the 1979 case, leaving this theory to remain largely speculative. The case took another strange and chilling turn 5 years after the Nagaokakyo murders, when another horrific killing occurred in Nagaokakyo City. In May 1984, a housewife was found brutally murdered in her home. In this case, the woman had been repeatedly stabbed before her body was wrapped in a futon, and the house was set on fire. The details of this case, particularly the violent stabbing and the subsequent attempt to conceal the crime, bore eerie similarities to the 1979 killings of Akashi and Mizuno. Investigators found that the blood type of the assailant in this second murder was type O, the same as that of the perpetrator in the 1979 case. This immediately sparked speculation that the 2 cases were connected, possibly involving the same killer. A particularly disturbing theory suggested that the 1984 victim may have been connected to the original murders. According to local rumors, the housewife killed in 1984 may have been an acquaintance or companion of Akashi and Mizuno on the day they were killed. Some speculated that she had gone foraging with the two women, but had left the area early, narrowly escaping the fate that befell her friends. In this scenario, the killer, having learned that a potential witness had survived the 1979 murders, may have tracked her down 5 years later to eliminate her. There were even claims that the surviving woman had been kept out of the public eye for her safety, possibly due to a media blackout agreement between the authorities and local outlets. However, this protective measure may have only delayed the inevitable, as the killer ultimately found her and committed a second murder in 1984. While this theory remains speculative, the blood type match between the two cases, along with the striking similarities in the violent nature of the crimes, continues to fuel debate about whether the same killer was responsible for both. Despite the promising leads, existing forensic evidence, and multiple theories, the Warabi-Tori murders officially became a cold case when the statute of limitations expired on May 24, 1994. No suspect was ever definitively identified, and no arrests were made in connection to the murders of Akashi and Mizuno. The investigation encountered numerous setbacks due to a lack of conclusive forensic evidence, the remote location of the crime scene, and the inability to identify key suspects despite witness reports. The unsolved nature of the case, combined with the brutal and senseless violence inflicted upon the victims, has left a lasting scar on the community of Nagaokakyo. The fear and uncertainty created by the murders have lingered for decades, with many locals still haunted by the memory of the unspeakable events that transpired in the peaceful woods of their town. As time passes, the chances of solving the case grow slimmer, but the legacy of the Nagaokakyo Warabi-Tori murders remains firmly entrenched in Japan's criminal history as one of the country's most infamous and mysterious unsolved crimes.